as a person who's written many, many pieces, and Saby's written countless album reviews, interviews, and
features,
features, total.
and I
It,
routinely challenge our artists' intentions, and also, like Powers did, I routinely will take it upon myself to speculate on where I think the artist is coming from.
so I think that was half my question. Half my question is, do you have a limit when it comes to what you can and cannot or should and should not approach an artist on them in terms of, your perceived intentions? And also, do you have a limit in terms of length, generally, in terms of like at what point are we overanalyzing a pop star?
Ooh, okay, so the length limit is usually imposed on me by like a word count, a maximum word count that I'm usually having to work within pretty tight ranges. Powers was given a lot more room, and I thought the piece really benefited from how much she was just able to explore and keep exploring. I mean, the piece is really, really rich. I don't think. Let me just. I'll tackle the general question. I should say so flat out. I'm on Lana Del Rey's side here. However, I thought Powers' piece made perfectly valid points, and in fact, that Lana Del Rey has set herself up for the very things that Powers pointed out. The thing she had the most issue with was this idea that what she presents in her when she, what she presents as an artist is a persona. That's always been my bone to pick with her, and that's always for me personally, that's always what's turned me off, is that it seems like she's method acting rather than just creating. Apparently that hit a nerve. Powers was talking about that, but mostly in a flattering light. And but the reason why I'm on Lena's side is because I feel like it's very important for critics, people who write about musicians for a living, to just stop and think for a second, well, wait a minute, how does this feel being on the receiving end of it? Even if Lana didn't really understand everything that Powers was trying to get across, it certainly doesn't sound like she absorbed the many flattering things that Powers said. But it sounds like she immediately reacted to the idea that what she's presenting is not quote unquote real, and that hit a nerve, and that put her on the defensive. My defense of her is, well, you don't know what this feels like to have people constantly projecting intentions onto you, whether Saby agrees with them or not. The artist doesn't have to be rational in their reaction. It obviously bothered her. She clapped back, and lots of music writers that I've been aware of really had an issue with this. Now, I don't know if I answered your more general question.
As most of your responses do, they generate a few more questions in there, right? So I know Lana Del Rey passingly. I'm not an intense Lana Del Rey fan, so I don't have a sense of her as a personality.
Mm-hmm.
I take it as just dreamy music.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at an album, I don't. There's a reason why I've never leaned toward music journalism. I don't see the threads that a lot of music journalists like yourself do. So, what are the threads that throughout her career arc and this album in particular that is the costume that they're wearing, that she's wearing?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to your question just from right before. I just have always gotten a sense from her that she's created a sort of postmodern character that she then inhabits. Father John Misty, I feel the same way about, it's not like a Bob Dylan. I mean, everybody has a persona that they project, right? If you're performing, it's not 100% you accurate reflection of you. there's a rescaling that happens. There's some sort of warpage or distortion that happens. But then there are people who are like, it's like part of the art is also inventing a character on top of that, and that always blocked my interest. Ironically, this entire thing might have made me a fan of hers. um,
Well,
in the
my
process.
my guess is that like you started to actually see the person underneath.
I think what happened was I saw that the real person in her response is vulnerable. That maybe this isn't just some sort of like art project, that she really is sensitive in her definition, and she said it in her tweet. She goes, this is real. So it's like, whoa, okay. And it brought to mind a story that a friend of mine told me once where like this person in his social circle had all these ideas about what his personal history was, and like everybody could tell that it was like patently false, right? I mean, it was like really outrageous. I think there might have even been extraterrestrials involved. And so one of the friends in their social circle like confronted him about it at a bar one time, and of course the reaction wasn't good. And my friend was like, dude, this is a story this person's been carrying around for a long time. Who are you to like think you can just quote unquote straighten him out? Like this requires more sensitivity. And so, not that Lana Del Rey's story is that far out, but clearly her reaction shows me that the human being in there needs this character. This is not something she just did to put us on. And that made me instantly sympathetic. That gave me a window into the person. So yes.
The human
And
being or her career?
I don't think that it's an issue of her career because she's gotten a lot of attention. And in this day and age, if you just troll people by playing a part, even if you melt down and you get shitty reviews, you're still winning because you're getting a lot of attention. So clearly that's not where she's coming from. I don't think. I felt that there was a vulnerability in her reaction, and I could be completely naive, but that was my impression. Like she's very. If you go to that place and point out that you don't think what she's presenting is authentic, that there's some other, again, some sort of acting going on, that obviously triggers something in her, some defensiveness, and she's very protective of that. And that alone made her endearing to me. It was I no longer saw it as like a as contrived. I saw it as, okay, well, this is what this person needs to do. Like there are people in real life that do that like they have a story that doesn't necessarily line up with their actual story, but they need to hold on to it.
You know, the two things, and I'll let you choose which rabbit hole to go down, because Greta Von Fleet comes to mind immediately.
Okay.
Because in terms of just listening to their music, and even them being interviewed at one point, I felt like they were not fake, but they were intentionally assuming a sound and a personality type that's not modern.
Right. And why would that belong to kids that age? It doesn't. I think it is, you said not fake, but it's not that believable. I mean, unless these kids were so attached to like their parents' records in their basement, but it's like you're not of the generation that would have had that response to that music. I mean, you can like that music obviously, but it's just like so like, my God, like such a, I don't know. It's almost like a chemistry experiment. It's not even fuck. It's like let's re-engineer Led Zeppelin, and why would somebody their age do that? So yeah, you said not fake, but I don't. It doesn't convince me at all.
Well, it brought me to, and that easily brings me up to the next question I had. The two rabbit holes that this conversation so far has inspired. It's like, why would a kid today try to be a rock star? It seems like there is low ceiling. Therefore, perhaps they feel just with the adding the social media element and having to have this larger, or if not larger, but smaller, I think of Little Nas X is another example of this in a different way. But having this social media persona is way more important now than ever before, or this persona that wasn't just, especially in rock in particular, being a star is not enough. Even in pop, being a star is not enough. Having this external thing helps inflate your career.
Right. Well, that's an excellent point and a question. I mean, that just brings up question marks for me. What I hear and what you're saying is that it's so natural now for people to project certain aspects of themselves that social media in general, if you're out there garnering followers, it's because you have sort of put a character up there. So the line has been blurred. I don't know. That's a really, really excellent question. But apparently, the people who were really upset with Del Rey's reaction are not considering that, or at least the ones that I read. Now, there are two other dimensions to this that this story needs to be framed in. The one thing I couldn't get over, and that I got a very negative reaction from when I brought this up in a private Facebook group of music writers, was it just seemed to me like well, let me go backwards. Let me go to the more severe thing. There are sort of two things happening at once here. So there's Del Rey's reaction, but there's also the fact that once she added the writer, Ann Powers, Del Rey's got 9 million Twitter followers plus. So a lot of her fans started flaming, like online harassing Powers. And so the implication is that Del Rey was either just being flat out intentional. Now, her tweets, I felt, did not contain any language that was inciting or there was nothing in them to suggest, hey, go after this person. Nothing at all. To me, they just seemed like a spontaneous knee-jerk reaction. However, several people have tweeted me saying she should have known, and there was an instance in the past where another writer or a rival of hers, when Lorde, somebody tweeted me and said that when Lorde criticized Lana back in 2013, Lana liked one of her fans' death threat to Lorde on Twitter. So there are plenty of people arguing and saying, look, you're being naive. To me, like, she knew exactly what she was doing, that this was going to generate that sort of swarm response with her stands going after this person. So there's that dimension of this that we can't ignore, and particularly that's particularly harsh when it's female writers, as we know from the sports world as well. Like, the abuse level is like way worse. Now, you got to figure a lot of Lana Del Rey's fans are also women, so that adds a whole element to this. However, what I was arguing in this among people, music writers that I know or that I'm, have been in touch with, I just can't get over the sense that at the end of the day, what we're talking about is that a bunch of people who get paid to criticize other people and to gauge their intentions have a really hard time when somebody gives it back to us. And in light of the harassment aspect, that sounds really insensitive, what I'm saying, and people have gotten angry because they think I'm ignoring that part of it. But I don't think this part of it can be ignored either. And and what I'm trying to suggest is like, well, if you want Lana Del Rey to be sensitive to the power she has on Twitter, then I think we need to be sensitive to the power we have to tell someone's story and make them feel like they have no control over it. And very few people sympathized with me on that point. I was basically one person who agreed with me. And what he brought up, which I loved the way he put it, he said, there's very much a shut up and play monkey undertone to the idea that a musician has no right whatsoever to respond. You don't have to be rational. If you don't like what was said, you have the right just like anybody else does. And what I asked in this group, so a music writer said to me, he's like, well, it's not our job to sometimes the kindest thing you can do is tell the truth and be critical and tell somebody what they need to hear. I said, fair enough, I actually agree with that. But how often do people take that well in life? Like when you have a friend or something, like, or somebody does it to you, the gut response is to resist, right? So I think there's a lot, and then there's the fourth element, which is that although I think Power's piece is brilliant, I really think it's like a marvelous. I mean, people should be studying this piece years from now in classes. Um, there was a whiff, I thought, of condescension to it, and there was a lot of um, tossing around these ideas that Del Rey, like framing Del Rey in this sort of modern feminist discourse. And I feel like it's very clear Del Rey doesn't want to be possessed like that. She doesn't want to be owned by any particular ideological slant. And again, you have to read the piece I can't do it justice, but so it sounds to me like a bunch of female writers are really upset that Del Rey won't play along with what they want her to represent. That then supports my other point, which is like, look, we're telling these people's stories and inscribing them on the stone wall of history. That's entirely in our hands. For us to act like that isn't difficult, and for us to act like in the age of Twitter, people don't lose their mind by having all this attention on them, that's really insensitive. And I felt like all the people who were really pissed at me and arguing with me, they refuse to see that part of it. They don't want to see an artist as a human being.
Wow. I have about 5 questions out of that one.
Please do.
Now, the easy analog is sports, right? So it's sort of like we opine about athletes, their performance, their product, about their career length, and we make these snap judgments, whether they're educated or not, on all of these things and more about them, and we expect them to not respond, to not be human, to sort of be the caricature that they're claiming that Ann Powers is claiming that Lana Del Ray is, which I find fascinating. Right? It sounds like a giant circular logic,
Sure.
in that way, and I also wonder, and I found myself wondering as I didn't read the entire piece, but I read about half of it, and I kind of found it a bit meandering to me. but that's just me. And I found myself taken by the amount of attention after I sort of started to search through Twitter and see the amount of people, and I wonder who responded to this, and I wonder how much of this is media navel gazing.
Right. How much of it is like a feedback loop of other people in media responding, and then right? Because I mean, a lot of the tweets are coming from writers
Talking to other
who,
writers about
right,
about this character that they're all writing about.
right, and this is the thing about this, and I said this in this Facebook group, and it obviously you'll see why this wasn't received well. But I said I think that this hits at a deeper uncertainty among critics that we don't have carte blanche to just say whatever the fuck we want about whoever without consequence. That's what really irks me about this, is that yes, I'm not cool with anybody being swarmed on Twitter. I think that's gross, and I wasn't convinced that Del Rey did it on purpose until I saw that tweet about Lord. I haven't verified if that's true, but now if that is true, it doesn't look like Del Rey was like. It doesn't look like she didn't know,
And
right?
even if it is true, that's a stretch of logic, I think.
I mean, but people have directly stated to me, there's no way she didn't know. This had to be intentional, and they've talked a lot about the power imbalance, right? Like, well,
Well,
she's got nine.
yeah, she's got a beehive.
Right, she's got a beehive. So, but kept saying, no, we're hiding behind that because there's a power imbalance the other way. Lana Del Rey can't write her own story. We've appointed ourselves to be the ones doing that. And this strikes at the heart of doubt, I think, in the heart of the critic, a term, as you know, I've said for years I don't identify with, that, maybe we're not necessary. Maybe we are cruel, and maybe we are armchair quarterbacks, and like the level of utter disregard for the idea that, well, maybe people are going to get upset by what you're saying. I mean, the knee jerk answers I got. Well, it's not our job to 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 do hagiography. It's not our job to do idol making and stuff like that. It's our job to tell the truth. It's like, well, wait a minute, okay, let's think about that a little deeper. Though those are platitudes. Um, so and Del Rey in the circles that I am aware of, like she was called immature, entitled, delusional, out of touch, like spoiled, all these things. Like, how dare you have a response to what somebody said? And that concerns me. And it's like, well, if you put that out there, you're going to get it back. I'm not saying this is what Powers was doing. I'm not even saying Powers was being cruel or guilty of this. But if you come to the table acting like you can just say whatever you want, and then why are you so sensitive? you know?
Mm-hmm. I got you.
And so much of the time I heard, well, when you put work out there, that comes with the territory. It's like, well, we are putting work out there too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's going to be clapbacks on the work you do. I mean, by day, I report, and when there are stories that I touch, whether it's politicians, especially politicians are incredibly touchy. But, and yeah, if you hear this, yes, you're touchy. All of you. Very touchy. Organizations and even people who don't have that higher profile, especially people who don't have that higher profile, are quite, when the light comes toward them, they get tense.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine a person like Lana Del Rey would still have a level of tenseness when the light that is shined on them isn't completely positive.
Right.
Which brings me to another idea that
I'm sorry to cut you off, but if the light is too accurate,
sure,
it hits too close to home.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
she's been going through this for years, where people are like either rejecting her for it or they're celebrating her, but in a way that again supports their, like, having her as the face of their ideological motives, and clearly that's uncomfortable. That's what seems to me to be happening.
That I did not know, and that makes it fit into the larger culture war motif, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that, like, being a public figure, you are in many ways sort of a Rorschach, and people see you the way their brains and their emotions drive them toward. And perhaps, this is, I think it happens, I think it happens on both sides of the aisle overall, but I do think it happens more on the left end where.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. And the irony of ironies here is that there are like dozens of female critics who are refusing to swallow the idea that it's not what Powers said that rubbed Lana Del Ray the wrong way. She just had a visceral reaction to someone pinning her down, and that was just uncomfortable. And I'm shocked that that of all the people to like, if it was a bunch of male critics, I would understand that. They're like, no, Powers was actually flattering her, and she was saying all this stuff, and she's comparing her to Joni Mitchell and all this stuff. But clearly, she didn't hear that part of it. That didn't get through because she just had a visceral sense of resistance, and it's like, wow, like you don't get this. That's like shocking to me.
Or she didn't read the whole thing.
Well, right. She shut down from just that initial, I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable, which that happens. How many times have you been around somebody uncomfortable and you keep trying to reason and you're just making it worse and worse because you're stepping over the fact that they are now, their defenses are up.
Without question. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Right.
And it's quite possible that she was like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this. Why does she have to do this publicly? Or maybe she has an overall ick factor with the idea of criticism based on the things you've said in the last few minutes. And she said, screw it, I'm going to social media to vent.
Well, and so a bunch of people told me, well, Twitter's been around since whatever, 2006 or whatever. By now she should know. I'm like, who isn't still figuring out the etiquette on Twitter? Especially people who live in public view.
It's
the line between what we say on there that should be private and what we don't. What we say on there that should be private and what is okay, what is no big deal to say. That's so fucking blurry. It seems to me like she just had a reaction. I don't buy the idea that she did it on purpose so her fans would attack this person. I mean, I have a hard time. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm totally wrong there.
No,
but
I think you're absolutely on the money. I think it's a moving target. And I don't think there's a rule book that's firm on it. And I think most of the rules that are made don't make much sense. And I think the folks that are making them are kind of they're captured by their own set of ideological and emotional agendas. So
right,
if you
I couldn't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if you have all those things, I mean, involved, I mean, like which it's kind of like I had this other conversation about why the world about morality, that we want the world to be a moral world and like a moral place. Like really? Okay, whose morals?
Well, and this doesn't even support the very morals that, and that's not surprising. I think we all have blind spots, but this is even glaringly inconsistent because I couldn't get over the insensitivity to the basic idea that someone in the public eye would actually be worn down by the attention and what is said about them. It's like all these people were screaming back at me. She's not allowed to have a reaction, basically. Why are you sympathizing with her here? That's what I heard so many times. It's like, well, what is she, not a person anymore? That is very troubling to me. That's the prevailing attitude among music critics. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean...
Do you think that she would have faced the same thing as a male act?
Pardon me?
Do you think if she was a man that she would have faced the same thing?
That's a good question. I think that there's a group of women writers that feel betrayed by Lana's response, and
that she should want to carry the flag.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna simplify and say that there's sort of one monolithic ideology. I just think now that we have more and more female voices, there's and that these conversations are shifting, and we're looking at women artists. We're wanting to put them more in the spotlight that they've deserved forever. There's a lot that comes with that, and it's very tempting to say, well, now you represent this group of people that is on the come up, and let's make up for decades or centuries of neglect, and we'll put that all on your art. And I can see a lot of people not wanting to go along with it, just like we see in among black artists. You know,
Hmm.
some are willing to say, yeah, yeah, okay, I'll my work can be a vehicle for all these things that you want to get across, in the bigger picture. And some people are clearly uncomfortable with that.